Dennis here with doityourselfdennis.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make homemade shiplap and how to install it. As far as preparation goes, you need to find out, actually we're going to put it on a ceiling. So in preparation you need to find your ceiling joists. So you can take a nail and a hammer and find the joists and then find the edge of it, and then if you come in 3/4 of an inch, that's going to give you your center, and you're going to want to find it at each end. And so then what you're going to want to do is chalk a line from one end to the other, and then in the middle you're going to want to take your nail again and check it to see how straight your ceiling joist is. I have found that in this particular house they're pretty straight, which is pretty, good, because I've done other ones that were pretty crooked. So you want to just make sure that you're, when you nail your shiplap up, you're going to be able to hit a joist. And the way you do that is with the chalk line. On this particular job, the ceiling goes like this because the drywall has sagged over time. This house was built in '78, and so over the years the drywall has done like that. So what we're going to do, we're going to put these strips up. They're just 3/16 inch thick, and we just ripped a bunch of them, and we will nail them up to the ceiling joist. And so that's what the second line is for. Can you zoom up this way? Our second line is lined up with the edge of the ceiling joist. So you see there's 4 nails here, or 4 nail holes, and that was just me trying to find the edge. And it's not that hard to do. You can get a stud finder or something and use it. But again, chalk a line to the other end so that you can put your strip up there. And we're going to nail that up next. So let me get set up for that and we'll get started nailing. Okay, all right, as far as the thickness of these strips, the way you can determine that is you can get a long straight edge or a level, something straight, and put it on the ceiling, and you'll see the little gap between. Like the gap up here, there's a gap here, and there's a gap here. So you're going to kind of measure that, get an idea of how thick you need the strips to be. 3/16 is going to be plenty thick enough for this. 1/4 inch, you could use it. I just ripped it on a table saw at about 1 3/8 of an inch, and then that's going to work just fine. So let me get this first one started here. All right, so in order to put this strip up, you're going to use the line that's the edge, not the center line. You want to use the edge line that you made. And I'm going to start out in the middle because I'm up here by myself. My wife's doing the videoing, so I'm just going to hold it back just a tiny bit from the wall, and line it up on my line. Now I'm using an air nailer. You don't have to necessarily, if you don't have an air nailer, I mean, you can nail it with a hammer and nail. Just use like a 2-inch nail. These nails happen to be 2 3/8, but they don't have to be nailed too often, because when we put our shiplap up, it's going to have more nails going through it. But you want it up there, pretty decent. So that's about all there is to putting this strip up. Once I get all this strip up, I'll start show you how to do the shiplap. Okay, so let me show you how to divide the room up. The room that we're working on here is kind of an odd shape. So it goes across, and then it's got about a 2-foot jog in, and then it squares up like that. So you need to start out getting your measurements. And so what I did was I started down here, I measured from here to here, and it was 180 3/4 of an inch. So then at the next widest spot, I went from this corner over here to here, and it was only 180 even. So we got 3/4 of an inch difference there. So to make up that little bit of difference, I'm going to take it off down here. So I start out making it even, dividing it in evenly in two. So that would be 90 3/8 of an inch. So I make a mark at 90 3/8 of an inch down here, and then to make up that difference of the 3/4, you're going to divide it in two, so we have 3/8 of an inch. So then, so now we have 90 3/8 minus 3/8 is 90. So I measured 90 inches out to try to take out some of that unevenness. So I've got that, and then what I'm going to do is whatever width shiplap you use, like I say, we make our own shiplap, and the way we do that is if it's on a wall, we usually make it out of 1/4 inch or 3/8 plywood, and we paint it. We rip it into whatever width we decide we want to use, and then just put it up, and then we put a spacer between it. It looks just like shiplap, like real shiplap. You can't tell the difference at all. So on the ceiling, we're going to use 1/2 inch plywood and basically do the same thing. On this job here, we've got these strips cut at 5 7/8 of an inch. So then when you add your gap on about 1/8 of an inch, you're going to have basically 6 inches. So what you want to do is you want to measure that distance. So here we've got 90 3/8, and divide that by whatever width you're going to be using, so 6 inches. So it comes out pretty even to 15 inches. You really don't want that, because your wall is it's not going to be true all the way down. I just guarantee you it's not going to be. So you want to have a little bit of room so that you can take some of the unevenness out by cutting it. And so what I did was I moved it over half the distance of 6. So I moved it over 3 inches. And so that'll give me 3 inches of playroom on this wall for anything that is out of, anything that's not straight. So, that's basically how you break it up. If this was square like that, you could just do it all there. But that's kind of how it goes. Let me have my wife. I'm going to have her scan up. And this is what after the strips. We got all the strips on. So, and something I'll point out is I did end up nailing about every 8 inches, because I found that in some areas the drywall had actually pulled away from the joist. So it was, when I nailed it, it pushed it up. Well, then it made kind of like a little hill or a valley. So if you nail it about every 8 inches, it'll bring it all up pretty even. So I wanted to show you that. So let me get set up to start putting the shiplap on, and we'll go from there. Okay, to give the little bit of extra staying power, I'll call it, I guess, if you take a level and you put it on these bands that we've got, the drywall just barely touches where it's sagging. It's just barely touching the level in the center. So to give it a little bit of extra sticking power, I'm putting a little bit of liquid nail right in the center of the drywall to help hold the plywood up and keep it from sagging. Because this drywall is probably sagged as far as it's going to sag. So just kind of thought I'd throw that in there, just give it a little extra. We'll turn it around backwards. Huh?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so we're just going to line it up with the line that we chalked earlier after our measurements. Are you centered?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm on that line.
I'm using an air nailer, and I'm using 2.5 inch long nails. I think that's probably sufficient for what we're doing. Yeah, my TV's in the way. See if I can get this. So that's all there is basically to start putting it up, and you just keep following your chalk line the rest of the way. When we get to the second row, I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so we're ready to put our second row on, and a couple of things. You can use the scrap from where you end up down there. I wouldn't use a very short piece, but this piece is 67 inches long is what we have left over from the other end. And so we're going to measure out, and we got 53 1/4. So we're going to cut it at 53, so we're about 1/4 inch from the chimney. And then as far as spacing it, we're just going to take a nail and these are 16 penny nails. It's about 1/8 inch, and we're just going to tap it next to the board. We'll tap this one back a little further because this is going to end where it's going to end. You're not going to want it in the middle because it may not quite reach, so you're going to put a little bit on the edge. So let me get me a nail here. Alright, so let me get my piece cut and we'll put it up there. Okay, so we're going to put our little bit of nickel nail on. It's not going to take a whole lot. And we'll just put our piece right up against our nails. We'll line that up so it's about in the center of our piece. Just push it up against the nail. Alright, so then you just carry on and keep going on, back down the rest of the way. There's something else I want to tell you about. When you measure your 8-foot pieces, don't take it for granted that it's 8 feet. So you're going to want to actually measure it and get the distance. I had one down there further and it was only 8 feet 96 inches. I had one that was only 95.5 inches. So you want to kind of keep that in mind when you're cutting your 8-foot pieces. Okay, I wanted to kind of show you how to measure around a light or a box or something. So this is a can light, but you measure the same thing around like an electrical box. Basically going to be the same thing. So you don't want to measure from here to here. You want to measure the longest or the shortest point here, where it's going to be the roundest. And so we've got about 2 7/8 inch. And then you're going to do the same thing over here, which is about 9.5. And then you're going to want to measure over here. You got to remember, you got to take out your 1/8 inch gap that you're going to have in here. So it's about 7/8, and if you take away an 1/8, so 3/4 inch. And you can measure across, measure across the can light. So we've got about 6.5 inches. And a paint can on these can lights is just about the perfect size. So, but it kind of gives you something good to go by. And so that's how you want to measure for boxes, outlets, whatever, can lights. I just thought I'd show you that real quick. Okay, so when you're laying this out on the board, you're going to want to turn your board over because that's the way it's going to go up there. And you only want to cut from this side anyways. So it was 2 7/8 and 9 1/2, right? Mm-hmm. And then we came out 3/4 of an inch.
It's the inside.
You'll make sure which side you're on here. So you're gonna make your mark. And you can get your square and kind of just line. A little line across there. And then you can use your can. Like I say, these cans are just about perfect for it. So you just line it up, put it up to your 3/4 inch mark, and draw your circle. Then you're going to get a jigsaw, or, well, that's what I use as a jigsaw. Just cut it out. Alright, I wanted to show you about putting the nails in. Okay, so what I ended up using is a 16-penny nail. And you don't got to put it in there much, but what you want to kind of do is hold your thumb up against the nail so that it stays flat against the last piece. And you just tap it a couple of times and that's plenty, so that you can pull it out with your hand, once you're done, got your piece up. Alright, so I wanted to show you about cutting around the can lights. I showed you one way of measuring earlier. Here's another way. If you're going to use like that paint can, it's pretty much the same circumference as the can lights. These are 6-inch can lights. What you can do is measure to the center of that can light. So on this one we got 35 inches. And then measure out to the edge again. And you got to remember, you got your 1/8 inch over here, so it's about 5 and I'm gonna say 5 3/8. So we're gonna go 5 1/4. And then I'll show you outside what we're gonna do. So it's 5 1/4, and what was the other measurement? 35 inches even. Okay, so again, you want to turn your board upside down, or the way it's going to sit up on the ceiling, and you're going to measure the 35 inches. Is it 35 inches? All right, and then it was 5 1/4. So from this side, 5 1/4. So you got to kind of make sure what side you're measuring from. This is going to be kind of a thin piece. So then if you just center your, whatever you're using as a circle, just center it on that mark and you should be pretty close. Okay, so if you're not real sure, you can measure it on the edge. I went back and measured that, and it was 31 3/4 and 38 1/4. And so we're right in there. And then just cut it out with your jigsaw.
figure out where to cut your hole, like on this one here, about the best way to measure it is, okay, so our boards are 5 and 7/8 of an inch wide, plus the 1/8 inch gap makes it an even 6 inches. So measure out 6 inches and make a mark next to the light. And then you're going to measure from the other end. You're going to measure on, put your tape measure on the edge and measure out to the light. And that'll give you your distance. Measure both sides. And then you're going to measure the center part here. And it's 4 1/4. And if you take away the 1/8, so then we have 4 1/8. And so that's how you're going to measure. And just be sure and measure on the right side so that you cut the hole out right. Okay, so to do the opposite, where you're cutting the hole out on the opposite side, it's easiest, again, we're going to use the 6 inches. So we measure out 6 inches. And we draw a line. Give you a reference point. And then, excuse me, then you're going to measure over. So I usually measure about 1/8 of an inch away from the side of the can. So this is going to be 7 1/2 and 14 1/8. And you're not going to subtract an 1/8 on this side because this is the edge of your board, that line. So you're going to measure it up, and it's going to be about 1 1/4 inches. So you make those marks, and then you use your can to line it up. Alright, so again, you're going to turn your board over so that it's laying the way it's supposed to go. And you're going to measure out, and we had 7 1/2, 14 1/8, and then we're measuring from this side, the 1 1/4 inches. So I just kind of draw me a little line to kind of reference by. And we can draw a line with our square on the other two marks. And then it's probably not going to line up exactly perfect, but just try to kind of even it up so that, you know, the lines are about the same on both sides. Draw your circle. Then you're just going to cut it out with a jigsaw. Okay, so I wanted to show you when you get up close to the edge, it's a little harder to get the nails in and get something, or to pull your board over to your nail. And something else, don't put your nail right at where you're going to nail at. Put the spacer nail back 2 or 3 inches so that it's not in the way when you're nailing. And just, you can get a flat bar, that's what I use, or a crowbar or something, and push it up, and then just pull it out, pull down on it. You don't pull real hard or you'll make an indentation in the drywall. So that's about the best way I know to get, get up close. And you just pull your nail out. I just nailed it up into the drywall a little bit, and it'll hold it. So that's about it for that part. Okay, I wanted to show you a little problem I've run into. These can lights, where there's not always a joist right next to it, they can be a little flimsy, so they may not be even going around. So what you can do is you can take a piece of wood, piece of shim, or what I'm using is that stripping that we put up, that plywood. There's a piece of it right there, but this piece here is below it because there's really not a whole lot there to nail to. So you just pull it down and then you just slide that in there. And it should bring it down pretty even. This could still stand to go up a little bit more. I might try to put another nail in it there to try to pull it up. Let's put one on the other side. Whoops, pulled that one loose completely.
That's where we had it glued. We had it glued up here. So I pulled it loose, but I think it'll be fine. I'll probably shoot a nail into it just to kind of hold it up there. You know, what I'll do is I'll shoot a nail in at an angle on the side here so it's not out here in the open. And it should hold it up there fine. And you're just shooting it into the plywood or the drywall. So just thought I'd show you that. Okay, so we've already filled all the nail holes. So I'm trying to kind of hide the nail. So this is what I was talking about, putting it in the side. And that's holding that up there good. I'll go ahead and put another one in there just for security. But you can sit up there. So I'd show you
So
that.
that's about all there is to making and installing your own homemade shiplap. One thing I will add is we always paint the edge before we ever put it up. After we've cut it into strips, my wife goes back and paints the edges, and we go ahead and put a coat of paint on, and then we put a last coat of paint on after it's all up. And I'll advise you to use flat paint. If you use a semi-gloss or a satin or even a gloss, it'll show everything. I mean, it'll show where you painted. So just use a flat paint, flat sealing paint will be fine. Thanks for watching, and check out my other videos at doityourselfdennis.com. Thanks again.